Hello everybody and welcome back to the shop. I want to take a few minutes and I want to thank everybody for following along. Thank you for the people that have subscribed to my channel, and thank you guys for clicking on this video and other videos and watching. So hopefully I can keep putting together some material and hopefully you guys don't get too bored with me. But once again today, hey, I'm working on the 69 Camaro, as you can see. And I want to go over some stuff. I'm probably going to pull some older video that I have already shot. One of the things I want to do is go over this RS headlight system. I've already showed you the modifications that we had to do to the insides of these fenders to mount these braces that hold these buckets. But what I didn't show you was what I have to do to modify the fender wells. And as you can see, maybe from that view, I actually have this fender fit back up on the car. I've got this fender completely welded out. Everything looks good. I'll show you the gaps on this thing here in just a few minutes, and kind of, unfortunately I didn't film the gap repair. I did have a guy, someone had commented on a video prior to this that they were curious to see that, but I promise in the future there's going to be some stuff that I do gap corrections on, and I'll show you how I done it, but I'll explain it here in just a minute. But anyway, I do have this fender well. I also went through, before I put this fender well in, and I welded up a bunch of unnecessary holes and got rid of some factory dimples and stuff that they put in this thing. But I'm gonna go over with you today of the modifications that have to be done in the apron of this that will mount this headlight bucket as far as it mounts on the bottom of this fender well. So anyway, appreciate you coming along, and sit back and enjoy. Thanks for watching. Okay, as you can see, I've got the fender back up. I've got everything lined up. My body lines look really, really close. And my target was 3/16 of an inch gap. And basically what I have done, and it was basically, I weld on metal onto this front lip of this door or the fender, because there were areas on the fender that, especially down here on this patch area, where that edge was really rolled, extremely harder, more of a roll than the top side of the fender. So I had to build those edges up with a MIG welder, and basically all it is just you grind it back down and you just keep working it until you get it where you want it. Right now I have just a little bit left down here. I'm a little bit close on the bottom, so I'll take a little bit more material off of this door lip. And this is also built up, so I'm not actually going to be grinding into the door edge itself. It's actually weld that I'm going to be taking off. And I've got a little bit of a dimple in right here that I'll take this out, but I've got this door gap looking really, really good. The fender fits really nice. Like I said, the body lines line up, and I was able to get the fender well modified on this side somewhat, and I've got the fender well bolted in on here. So outside of the modifications that I need to make to the apron of this fender well to accept the RS headlight buckets, there's a lot of other things that I've done to, especially the other fender well that's in the car, and I'm going to do on this one as well. As you can see on this fender well with all these holes that I've got marked, I'm going to weld all of these holes up and get rid of them. None of these holes will be used on this car, so I want a really nice clean fender well look. There's staple holes where they stapled the rubber seals around the fender wells from the factory, and if you look real close, I don't know if you'll be able to see it from this angle, there's a couple of dimples here that I'll weld those dimples up. One thing that I've noticed on this fender well, and I'll show you the template here shortly that I use to modify the apron, but it looks to me like I've got a crease on this fender well and it's buckled. So before I can actually modify this, I'm going to have to try to take this crease out of this fender well. So I've got to do that before I do the modification. Next is I've got this template, which this one actually comes from DSE, and you cut this template out of here, and they tell you in the instructions to bring this template in from the bottom side to mark these two holes, and then you have to cut this. These are just 3/8 holes that will go in this spot here, and then you'll have, this is a 2 3/8 hole that'll end up being cut over here. Now, I cut this template out on the other fender well, and I didn't like how it fit on the bottom, so I ended up making a couple of extra cuts, and then I laid this in up on the top, and it seems like it locates in this valley a little bit cleaner. And I'll show you that in a little more detail when I get to that point. But first, I'm gonna weld up the holes, and then I gotta fix this crease. So stay tuned. I got all the holes welded up in the fender well, got everything, all the welds ground back down and cleaned up. I was also able to get the crease. There was a crease right through here, and then this ear here was bent in just a little bit. So it's kind of funny because I didn't notice that when I took this car apart. It must have had been hit at some point in its life. But so now I've got this template. Like I said, you can download this template and you cut this template out, and they recommend that you put this template in from the underneath side of the fender. Of course, it is also designed to be a kit that you install on the car with this fender well not being out. So I can do that, but it also, to me, I really, when I did the other fender well, it didn't really seem like it located these holes in this dimple well enough. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and cut this out, because these holes are pretty well located in this. You can almost eyeball that, and then get that located in there, and then I'll get these close, and then we'll mark the center on this hole. I think for the most part, I feel a little more comfortable about doing it that way. So I'm gonna cut this out. I'll be right back. Okay, I cut the center out of this one, and as you can see, it really tends to fit a lot cleaner in the valley of this dimple. So now that I have it where I want it, I'm just gonna put me a couple pieces of tape on this, get this located, and then we're gonna take this one, and I'm gonna somewhat locate that with these two marks and these two holes, kind of looking straight down, get the edges somewhat lined up. And then we'll put some tape on this, hold this one in place. So now I'll get me a center punch. I'll knock me some centers on those, and I'm gonna put me I'll put me a pilot hole in them. And I think that's located well enough to where I can move on to the fender. Now with the fender well kind of done and out of the way, now I need to finish up. If you guys will remember, I had this fender on the car, and the patch was kind of clecoed into place. So now I need to finish trimming this edge right here and go ahead. I'm gonna finish welding out the patch panel, get rid of all these old emblem holes, and I'm gonna get rid of these two emblem holes and the marker lights in this fender. So that's pretty much what I'm up to next. So as you can see, it's just a process. I just keep working this weld down. I'll grind these areas, and then when this starts to feather in, I'll just kind of feel for the highs and lows and just take my hammer and dolly. And the trick here for me is just to get it as flat as I can and get all of this undercut out of the weld. It's just a very slow process to get a fender patch when you're doing this. People make it look really easy, but it's just time consuming. Okay, I've got all the patch panels and the holes filled in. I've done some hammering and dollying on it, so it's fairly flat and fairly smooth. It's close enough now. So I think the next step for me now on this is I'm gonna go ahead and get this fender hung up on the car. I almost forgot one more thing that I want to do before I put this fender back on. I'll end up doing this to the other fender at a later date, but these clips go in on the lip of this fender well. And my plan is I want the fender well to be able to set flush. So I'm either going to trim this, or I'm going to take this and clip this off right here and poke me a hole in here and center those, and then make a tack weld on these right here, so there's nothing that whenever the fender well comes across here, when it bolts together, it'll just be two pieces of metal and this won't be sandwiched in between. But these will locate on the back side like that. So after looking at the clips that I had, I decided to make my own. If I was going to cut the other clips, it wasn't going to give me enough to weld to, so I made these here, and I'll install these instead. I'll put me a couple of holes on each side of it and just tack weld these in. Okay, now I've got the patch pretty much welded in. I've done quite a bit of hammer and dolly work here, done some body spoon, and I have this pretty good. There's some low spots and stuff in it. It still could stand to have a little bit more massaging done, but in all, I'm very, very pleased with this patch. So the next thing I'm planning on doing, I've got the fender bolted on, as you can see. I have all the metal work, for the most part, on the fender complete. The next thing I'm gonna do is work on this door gap. And I didn't film this on the other side, and basically I didn't film how I corrected the door gaps, whether it be too tight, too much gap. And I did actually have someone comment, and they asked me that how I was gonna do the repair and fix these gaps. So in this part, I will go over this. So as you can see, what I've actually done first is I've got my drum sander. It's an Eastwood machine. It works really, really well. And I've taken the EDP primer off of the door skin, and I've also stripped all the, some of this was etching primer, and some of this was just some spray paint that I sprayed on this after stripping it so it wouldn't rust. Anyway, I've got that stuff stripped off of here, and I've got basically some chem dye sprayed on here. And my plan is I want to shoot for a 3/16 of an inch gap. And basically on this side, I'm going to do it a little bit different. On the other side, I used some 3/16 inch thick body shims, and I just basically worked it down through the gap. On this side, I got a little smarter so I don't have to try to hold these together. Granted, I could probably make me something and spin it out on the cut it out on my mill or whatever, but in this case, a drill bit, 3/16 inch drill bit. And what I'll end up doing, and I'll zoom in on this as I do this, but I will start up here or anywhere. You can start here, and I'm just basically going to go down through this gap, and I'll mark areas such as this. It's tight. From the door top here down, it's a little bit loose. I could get some gap in there, so I may build the door up a little bit here. However, there's also areas that it's really tight. And so what I'll do, my next step is I'll go down through here and I'll put lines and everything, and I'll start putting some marks on here. And basically this is going to be a multi-step process, because I'll have to make adjustments, pull the fender, do more adjustments, and then reinstall the fender. Now, there are some areas in this door gap that are really tight, and conventional wisdom would tell me to just shim the fender fold a little bit more forward and then just work the deep spots, the larger gaps, by adding metal. I can do that, but on this side of the car, I fear that I have already, to get the shim gap that I have, the gap that I have, the shim stack that is in between the fender and the firewall is about a 1/4 inch more gap. Fender shims, good grief, can't even talk. It's about a 1/4 of an inch more shim stack than what I have on the passenger side. So if you stop and think about it, you shim one fender farther forward, somewhere you've got to make up that difference, especially whenever you look at your hood fitment against the front header panel. I can go another 1/16 of an inch and probably be in good shape on this, but I think what I'm not real sure. I may end up trimming this lip and then just reshaping this lip. The fender has a really good curvature. This is a factory original curve. And the only thing that I do for sure enough see, the fender patch, and I had this issue on the passenger side as well, this edge has a lot more roll to it, and it's not as crisp as the original fender edge. So I will come in here and I'll build this edge up and make that a lot sharper edge. And like I said, there's areas that I'll have to open up. So anyway, I'm gonna zoom in, I'm gonna reset the camera, zoom in, and then I'll start marking this, and then you guys can kind of see what I'm doing. So be right back. Okay, as I was saying earlier, I've got my chem dye on here. I actually put just a little bit more on here just to give it a little bit darker coat, but there's a couple of ways that I can attack this. And as I was saying, the curvature of the fender is really in really good shape. Of course, this is of course the factory fender, and the shape of this contour is really 1969. So I want to stay with this. So I don't want to alter the curvature of the fender. And since this door skin is aftermarket, the work and what will be modified is the actual door skin. So I showed you guys earlier, there's a couple of ways, a couple of methods. One is I'm shooting for 3/16 of an inch gap down through here. And what I ended up doing, I took 3/16 of an inch body shims, and I just took them to my spot welder and I spot welded them together to give me an actual shim that I can run through here. Or the next best thing is just a 3/16 drill bit. Now, what I can do is, if we just use the drill bit and I can run that drill bit through here, you're gonna see areas. What I'll do is I'll just come down through here. The preliminary marking, I'm just gonna come down here and I'm gonna mark in the center of this. And right here, I'm pretty good. From here, and it starts to get a little bit wide right here. But for the most part, there's not much that needs to come off up here. So I'm gonna use that as my starting point. And then I'm gonna come down through here, and I'm gonna find the next spot where it gets tight and it feels pretty good, which is there. It's a little bit snug down through here. So once again, I got this spot here, and I've got two colors of markers to do this with. So right here, and basically from here to here, it's tight. So I'm going to put a negative, or I'll just basically put T, which will represent that it's tight. And right here, I need to add. So I'll come through here and I'll show you something else that I'm gonna end up doing just directly that'll help. From here down to about here, we start to get tight. The gap right here looks pretty good, so I'm gonna call this good. Right here, it's a little bit tight, and so I'll be taking some material off of that. Now, another thing that I will do, I made this other little tool, and I might have actually shown this in another video, but I just took a couple of pieces of metal. I bent one and then tack welded it and drilled a hole in it. Now, as I was saying, since this curvature is in good shape, what I could do, and this is what I plan on doing, is I've got this in here and I'm gonna end up dragging this down through here, and I'm gonna get me a mark across here that actually mimics the contour of this fender. So what that's gonna allow me to do, I will come up here and I will measure from the edge of this door to this mark. And basically what I'll wind up doing is, if that mark looks really nice, as I'm adding my material to this spot here, or even taking away material here, I can use a caliper or something that's got a little bit of a precise measurement, and I'll just measure off of this line, and that will get me a preliminary setup. So we'll just do it. I did this on the other side, but I didn't end up using the reference line because it honestly just proved to me that I didn't need it over there, because everything over there was so wide to begin with. But essentially try to just keep it straight, run it with the contour. And now you can see I've got a nice line to come over here, and I'll basically come up here and I can set my dial in, or my caliper set up here, which is right at 1 inch. And then I can come down through here and I can, as I'm building this up, I can measure that. And then here, I can also measure it here as I'm taking off metal. I'll continue to do that down on the lower side of this door. And one of the reasons why I'm doing this, as I may have said in an earlier video, was because I pulled the fender off the passenger side, I bet you a good 6 to 10 times before I got this gap. So this, I think this technique, which this is just something I've thought of, I'm sure someone else out there maybe has done this, but this technique will basically get me in the ballpark to where I can make one big adjustment on this door, and then if I like it, then I can actually come in here and finish it up by taking material out. So anyway, I'm gonna set up, and I'm gonna mark the lower section of this door, and then we'll go on about pulling the fender back off. Okay, I've got the bottom section marked. I've got my line, my scribe line extended, and I did a little bit more fine measurements, and it's honestly between exactly 1 inch and 950 thousandths. That'll get me within the ballpark. But you can see I've got a couple of small sections that's really good. This small section here is a little bit tight. From here up to this line is good. So I'll take a little bit, I'll feather this in. Also, if you'll notice on the edge of the fender, and this is something that I had to end up doing on the other side, this has the lower patch, fender patch, and I was talking earlier that these edges on these fender patches aren't quite as crisp and sharp. So roughly from about here down to here, I'm going to work the edge of this. So I will build this fender up and make that thing a little bit more defined as far as the edge. It's got a little bit of a roll. It would probably be okay, but with what we're doing here, I want to build that up just a little bit because it will define these edges on these doors a little bit better. So anyway, the next step, like I said, the fender once again will have to come off, and once I get the fender off, then I'll start doing the welds and slowly building this up and taking it out. Now, one thing I will say that I'm a little bit concerned with, if you've ever put a door skin on, these edges are straight and you actually hammer and dolly these things over. So the one thing that does kind of worry me a little bit is the material that I have to take off of here is going to make this edge real thin. So I'll probably cut this back just a little bit more, and I'll do this in small sections, and then I'll end up just welding this. I can say that if this door skin ever is removed again, they're going to more than likely have to buy an entire door. But that's the plan is this thing will outlast me and hopefully the owners. So just a little bit more to pass along. But so that's kind of the plan. The fenders are coming off next, and then we'll get to work grinding and slinging some sparks. Okay, that should pretty much take care of this edge on the fender. Try to get down a little bit lower so you can kind of see more what I'm talking about. But this edge was it had a lot more of a round. It was a lot more round that I like. And since I'm wanting a little bit more defined door gap, I figured that wouldn't take much to work out. It didn't take much metal, but it's just that little bit of detail that I wanted to put in there to get that sharp, crisp turn. So now I'm going to start working on this door edge, and I think right now I'm going to start with this section right here, and because this section actually needed to be built up, so that will be where I focus the next on. And if you can look at this, you'll see that I've got a darker line right through here. What that is I may take my hammer and dolly and I may massage this a little bit more to flatten this lip. That might help on the build. So anyway, that section from here to here is where I'm going to work next. Okay, so this was what I was referencing earlier, where I was talking about taking a whole lot off of this door edge. And as you can see, there's areas in here where it's gonna have almost an 1/8 of an inch that's gonna be trimmed off this lip. You can see I've already got this set. This down here is pretty well taken care of. But what I was talking about, making this door edge so thin, you can almost see it right here. You'll see where I have started to take this off. If you look real close, that is cut through the lip of the door skin. So that is the reason why I'm gonna do this section here in pieces at a time. So basically I'll end up doing it as pretty much for the most part, the width of my belt sander. And I'll go down through here and get this door skin to where I'm not gonna take a bunch of this off at once so that thing completely opens up. But that's definitely what I was worried about, and wanted to share that. All right, for the most part, that's pretty much step one of this process. As you can see, I went ahead and I've cleaned all the chem dye off the panel and have it pretty much ready for the second round. Well, I've got to put the front fender back on before I can do any marking, but as you can see, it's all cleaned up. Work these edges down. Now, what I'll show you maybe later, but on the back edge of this, there's a little bit of attention that'll be needed to be made on the inside roll of this, but as good as those welds were on this, it'll be very minimal. So I think what I'll do now is I'll put the front fender back on it and see just how close. I have a feeling that I'm gonna be a little bit under right here, which is kind of intentional. I wanted to get enough cut off, and then if I had to, it would be much easier to build up. So that's my next step. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna mount the front fender back on, and we'll see how this fits. And if it needs more adjusting, then I'll do that. And if not, we may move on to the next part of this car, which is stuff that has to be done further on the back. So we'll see in a bit whenever I get this back on. Now that I got the fender back on, I'm very, very pleased with the way this gap has turned out. You should be able to see it from the camera, but it's very close. And the rest of this, we're gonna have some body filler and stuff that we'll be massaging a little bit of these edges a little bit with. So I'm gonna call this good for now. Very pleased, like I said. I think while I'm on this side of the car, one of the next things that I need to do, I haven't done it. See if I can navigate the camera here. Get the camera back here to where I can see it. But the quarters, when I put the new quarters on, a lot of times these quarters, the rolls, as you can see, I've already marked this right here. This edge from here to here has a lot, it's got more of a radius to it. So I don't know if you'll see it in the camera, but I want to close some of the radius up on this to where it looks closer to what's below it. Additionally, when these door skins are coming in, when they come in and I put them on, there's a little edge right here that is blank. And as you can see, this one here is still open. So I'm gonna cut a little piece of metal and I'm gonna fill out this corner of the door. The next thing that I need to do that I haven't finished up on the quarters, see if I can move again, is this seam right here. I have yet to spot weld this and finish it up to the inside of that quarter, the inner quarter panel, and that's pretty much just gonna be spot welding this stuff and then working this up here. These didn't fit real good whenever I put these quarter panels on, so I ended up just clipping the top of this quarter panel. Now I have that piece that I cut out of here. I'm gonna have to spend some time and I'm gonna dress this up. But I think for the most part, the next thing I'm gonna do on this is I'm gonna work this area here, and then I think once I'm done there, I have to do the exact same thing on the passenger side, and then we're gonna move back to the trunk and the deck lid and finish final assembly on that. So stay tuned. Okay, as you saw, I was able to get this back of this door lip, got this little area closed in, got this cleaned up and dressed. Also, I built the roll, the radius of this up, and added material here to take a little bit of the radius out of it. Also, I got this flange. Basically, you saw me drill some spot welds through here, spot weld these up, and then I dressed all the welds. So this seam is ready. So the next thing I'm gonna tackle is this. And this isn't gonna be as bad as I thought it was gonna be. One of the nice things, I do have a car sitting up front and another original 69 car that I could compare this. So I'm gonna set up and got just a little bit of a flange area here that I've got to weld in and dress this up. And then I think for the most part, this side's done. I'm gonna repeat on the other side, as I said earlier. And then once I'm done, I think we're gonna move into the rear section of the car. Well, after a little bit of searching through the shop, I was able to find the piece that I cut off of this top of this quarter panel. So right there it is. It's just a closeout at the very top, and I've got it trimmed up. So I think I'm just gonna try to weld that piece back in, and that should finish off this quarter panel. So hopefully this should weld in fairly easy, and we'll move over to the other side. that pretty much takes care of the driver's side. As I was saying, I got lucky and I found that piece, and you know, got a little trimming, did some more trimming, and I finally got it fit up in here, and it looks really, really good. It actually looks extremely close to what's on the car up front. So as I was saying earlier, I've got to do the exact same thing on the passenger side, with the exception of I've already fixed the door gap, the door and fender gap. So I don't know that I'm going to set up and film that over there. So I think I'm going to pick up my tools for tonight, and I'm going to start fresh on that side tomorrow. And depending on the length of this video, I may go ahead and show just a little bit over there and do just kind of an update on the car overall, and cut this one and start another one on the rear of the car, which I don't have a ton of work to do, but it's just mostly getting the deck lid completely finished up, and some edges on it are gonna have to be worked as well. So anyway, I'm gonna set up and knock the other side out, and we'll see you after a bit.